Hello and welcome back to another episode of More Than Milestones. I am so excited to be joined today by the two and only Vanessa and Xander Marin. If you're not familiar with them, Vanessa is a licensed psychotherapist with 20 years of experience in the sex therapy field. And Xander used to work at Google, but quit when he realized it's way more fun to talk about sex with his wife all day. So we are going to dig right into it. Thank you guys so much for being here. I am so excited to talk all things the roommate phase, the Bristle reaction, reigniting your sex life after kids. But let me just turn it over to you for a sec. Tell us a little bit about you, where people can find more about you, all of that good stuff.
Well, first of all, let me just say for anybody listening who saw the title of this episode and was like, oh my God, I've got a little pit in my stomach. I want to just start off by normalizing every couple struggles with intimacy. I don't care what your best friends are saying. I don't care what your neighbors seem like. Every couple struggles with this. And even the two of us, this is our job. This is our whole world. We've had our own struggles with low sex drive, mismatched sex drive, orgasm difficulties, unable to communicate.
Even now, things don't look perfect.
Yeah. So we really understand what it feels like to look back at those early days of your relationship and wonder, oh my God, what happened to that couple who was so madly in love, who couldn't keep their hands off each other? So we want everyone to know that that's normal. You're not alone. And most importantly, there are very practical tools that you can use to reconnect with each other. So I hope by the end of this episode, you have sighed a big sigh of relief and you're walking away with at least a couple of very tangible things that you know you can take into your relationship and start feeling an impact.
And you can see all that stuff over on our Instagram at Vanessa and Xander. We do stories every day, tons of fun reels and posts, just trying to, show you that, talking about your sex life, working on your sex life, your relationship, it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be hard. And so, Instagram is probably the best place to find us. We're also on TikTok. We also have a podcast. We got a book. We got all kinds of things.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. And honestly, I love that intro so much because that is really the hope with this conversation is to normalize it, to normalize that this is real for every single couple at some point or another. And I think what often happens is if there is any worry or guilt or shame about the conversation, we just pretend it's not happening. And, my hope with this is that we can get really open and honest. And like Vanessa said, leave you with some really tangible tools moving forward. So let's get right into it. So in this first part, I really wanted to start with talking kind of just about sex after kids in general, the roommate phase, the Bristle reaction. We hear so much about overstimulation and touched out, but what does that really mean in your opinion as a sex therapist looking at the eagle eye of kind of the overarching view of this whole conversation?
Well, one of the biggest challenges about becoming parents is that nobody prepares you for the impact that it's going to have on your relationship and especially on your sex life. So most people, they get the 6-week checkup where your doctor either tells you, okay, you probably won't die if you start having sex again, or no, definitely don't do it yet. But that's all that people get. And so couples go into this stage where your life is completely transformed. Everything about your life is different. And yet you wind up feeling like, oh, well, what's wrong with us that things didn't immediately go back to normal right at that 6-week timeline, right? And so what we like to normalize is helping couples recognize, like I just said, everything in your life has changed. How could your sex life not change after that? And some of the things that you mentioned are some of the biggest reasons why sex starts to feel so much more complicated after kids. So, I mean, first of all, you're just straight up exhausted, right? You don't have privacy. You're dealing with anxiety about, am I doing this right? What's going on? Who let me walk out of the hospital with this tiny little human? And then you're also dealing with your body, like your relationship with your body changing. Maybe you have physical trauma from the birth itself. And then there's all the stuff that you mentioned as well of like feeling touched out, feeling overwhelmed. And this can be a really challenging thing for male-female couples because there's just no way for you to fully understand each other. Like your male partner is never going to understand what it feels like to have a tiny human relying on you, clinging to you, touching you, needing to be held by you all day, every day. As involved as your partner might be, as compassionate and sensitive as he might be, he's never going to get that experience. So, right from the get go, couples start feeling like they're on different pages from each other. And even it can feel like opponents. Like you just really don't understand it. You really don't get it.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that we really want to work on with new parents is figuring out ways to overcome that feeling of being touched out, of your body just being completely overwhelmed and overloaded and just cannot deal with another human being needing something from you.
Yeah, I think like at the highest level, like Vanessa was alluding to, it's like we don't talk enough in advance about how things are really going to change. I mean, I think so many parents say like, God, like I knew that once I actually came home from the hospital with the baby, it was going to be hard, but no one prepared me for how hard it actually is. And, that in, raising a child, that's something that we're not scared to talk to other people about. But when it comes to sex, like that is a topic where we are already hesitant to talk to even our closest friends. So like, hey, I'm
Mhm.
struggling with this. Hey, has this ever happened to you? Right. And so if you can't, if you don't talk about that in advance, you don't ever consider with your partner, here's some very real impacts to our sex life that we need to be ready for and start setting some expectations for what is going to change. And maybe we need to come up with a plan for how we're going to address that and prioritize intimacy. When we don't do that, we don't have that conversation, we're not prepared at all, then one or both partners ends up coming to the natural assumption that, oh, well, just like, everything else, we're just supposed to bounce right back 6 weeks or so after after the birth, right?
Mhm.
And that's where people really get into trouble. That assumption that, oh, things are supposed to go back to a certain way. It's like, no, nothing is going to go back to a certain
Yeah.
way. It's we need to strategize and game plan about what do we want our sex life to look like now, accepting the realities that we are currently living under.
So let's make it practical. One of the most important things to do is to build in some sort of transition times. So a lot of moms feel this pressure of, I'm with the baby or I'm with my kids all day, and then I'm supposed to go immediately into sexy mode with my partner. And that feels super overwhelming and scary. You're not going to be able to make that transition. It's too big of a leap. We have to build in a transition phase in between. So I like to think of it as you're going from mom mode. You have to go first back to me mode, and then you can go to we mode. But you can't go from
Mm.
mom straight to we. So practically, can you find some sort of transition ritual that you can do and that your partner can support you in doing that gives you just a little bit of time to come back home to yourself, come back home into your own skin, reconnect with yourself and your body and let go of the day and then, transition into time with your partner. So we're very realistic people. It'd be great if every mom had the chance to like take a 60-minute bath and read your book and listen to your podcast and go for a walk. But that's not going to happen, right? So let's be realistic. Is it, even if it's just some days, it's like 60 seconds where your partner grabs the baby and you sit in the closet and turn the lights off and don't have your phone and just like breathe for 60 seconds.
Mhm.
Or maybe some days there's like 3 minutes or 5 minutes. But is there something little that you can do that helps you reconnect with yourself? So literally it could just be deep breathing. Definitely put your phone away because you don't want that extra stimulation from the phone. Maybe it's listening to one of your favorite songs. Maybe it's a quick little dance party. Maybe it's just sitting outside in your backyard and looking at some trees or smelling some plants. But something little that you could do where you think of it as this is my transition ritual to come back to myself first.
Yeah, I love that, and I think part of it too, like, for me, at least, was, like, that I think it becomes when you're not prioritizing even just the conversation about it, I feel like it almost becomes, like, one more thing, right? It's, like, one more thing you need to, like, schedule into your day, one more thing you need to just get through to get to the next thing where whether that's going to sleep or whatever it might be, but I feel like it's so powerful what you said of really just prioritizing having the conversation. Like, this is our real reality now,
Mhm.
and the other thing that I wanna go back to really quickly, because this is something you've talked about before that for me, it was like, like mind blowing. The like innate mismatched sex drives or the innate differences in sex drives versus like, I would love to talk about spontaneous versus responsive, which I have
Mhm.
heard you talk a lot about. And I love that conversation. And I feel like understanding both yourself, your sex drive, and being able to have that conversation with your partner is such a powerful step in getting past that phase where things are really hard and all of a sudden like you get through the 2-hour witching hour window and you're like the thought of someone touching you is like I could
Uh-huh.
die, you know. But I think that sex drive, it's so it has always felt really important to me when you talked about it, so I would love to talk about that just a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll get into it. I also want to tag something for us to come back to. What you said really caught my attention, that just one more thing.
Yeah.
If sex for you feels like just one more thing, we're doing it wrong. So let's come back to
Yes.
that. But
Okay.
let's talk
I'm
about the
making a
two
note.
different sex drive types. So most people have no clue that these two types exist, and this information can be really game changing. So basically, there are two parts in our body that we get turned on and ready for sex. So we have mental desire. That's when the idea of sex sounds good to you.
Or you're thinking about
Yeah, you're
sex
thinking
throughout the
about it.
day.
And then we have physical arousal. So your body is starting to get turned on. It's feeling good. It's getting ready for sex. So things like getting wet, getting an erection, that kind of stuff. So the two sex drive types depend on where you feel desire first. So we have spontaneous desire, and that's when you feel mental desire first and then the physical arousal second. Every sex scene that you've ever seen on TV and in the movies, it's always spontaneous desire. It's like the person is just going about their day. They randomly, like the idea of sex pops into their head, and then they want to go find their partner and have it. So that's how most of us think it's supposed to work. I mean, even just think of the word spontaneous. Most people will say,
Mhm.
like, oh, yeah, I want it to be more spontaneous. I want our sex life to be more spontaneous. But most people don't even know that the second type of desire exists, and that's responsive desire. And research shows that about 85% of women have responsive desire. So this is really
Wow.
important for women, especially if you feel like you're low desire or no desire. You're not, you're probably responsive desire. So, responsive desire is the opposite. We have to feel arousal, feel good in our bodies first, and then that mental desire follows. So, one of the classic ways of knowing that you might have responsive desire is if you've ever caught yourself in the middle of sex or even at the end of sex thinking, that this is really fun. Why do I never seem to want this? Like
Mm.
that's responsive desire. So it's not that you're low desire or no desire. It's just that your body needs something to respond to. Your desire needs something to respond to. So this can be a big issue because, like I said, most of us think desire is supposed to be spontaneous. So the way we initiate is spontaneous. Like, hey, do you want to have sex with me? If you're responsive desire and your partner asks you that, 99 times out of 100, the answer is going to be no, because you haven't had any
Uh-huh.
sort of physical stimulation first, right?
Okay.
And especially if you're, a busy mom, you've got a million things going through your head, like you're just not going to have that mental desire pop up out of nowhere. So we have to think about desire in a different way. We have to give our desire something to respond to, where we start with the physical sensations first.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I was just thinking about this as you were describing that. I can imagine that, regardless of how kind of intensely how intense or how much responsive desire you had before you had kids, I can imagine that responsive desire probably gets only stronger when you do have kids. If you think about it from like an evolutionary perspective, it wouldn't be very convenient or it wouldn't be very good for the survival of our species if you have a kid, from an evolutionary perspective, like mother is taking care of the kid and they are just, God, can't stop spontaneously thinking about sex when they're supposed to be taking care of the kid. Like that would be really impractical. That would not lead to a lot of survival of babies, right?
Very fair. Fair, yes.
Yeah, I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of women say that they don't feel their desire come back until like a year, 2 years after having a kid.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, a lot of what Xander's talking about feeds into that. Is, we're designed to focus on making sure this tiny little human survives. That's where
Totally.
all of our energy and attention are going to.
Totally. And I also feel there for me there's been this kind of like moment where things shift and all of a sudden maybe the baby doesn't need all your attention all the time, right? And so maybe I can start to do something that makes me feel a little bit more like me, or good in my body, or maybe I can prioritize movement and exercise a little bit more, and that helps with maybe my body image and the way I'm perceiving myself, and in turn then how I'm presenting myself to Jay. And I think there's so many things about becoming a parent while still being like really in love with your partner and really wanting, but like you just only have so much to give, And I think, I don't know.
Well, that's why the communication aspect is so important, because typically what happens is couples start drifting apart after they have a kid. They both feel really embarrassed and confused and not sure what's going on, but they don't want to acknowledge what's going on because that feels scarier and like, oh my God, I don't want to like have to say out loud what's really happening. And then that leaves both partners wondering like, well, does my partner care? Do they notice? Do they know what's going
Yeah.
on? And so it creates even more distance when you don't talk about it. But if you can talk about it openly with your partner, and this is really the key, especially for talking to men, is frame it in the context of wanting to reconnect. So if you can say to your partner, like, our connection is so important to me. I love you. I want to prioritize us. I'm really struggling. And I'm thinking like maybe these are some things that I would need, or these are some things that could be helpful for me. So talking to your partner in that way, like really helps them recognize how important intimacy is to you, that it is something that you're thinking about. And that gets them way more on board with helping out, and doing things so that you can create a little bit more time and space for yourself.
And also in having that conversation and being able to describe to your partner, hey, I just listened to this podcast and they told me about these two different types of desire. I had no idea were a thing. And, I'm realizing probably I am responsive desire and you are probably spontaneous desire. And, it's like if we can start talking about the realities of, hey, this is what life looks like with a kid or with multiple kids, like it doesn't there's not a lot of space for fully spontaneous sex, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
our life is pretty scheduled. We have very limited times where we have an opportunity. And I think that can be really valuable for your partner to understand, oh, okay, yeah, because like Vanessa said, most women are more responsive. Most men are more spontaneous. So it's like if he can start to understand, oh, okay, yeah, my first thought is I want sex to be spontaneous, but I got to get real honest with myself. How realistic is insisting on spontaneity in my sex drive in this season of life? It reminds
Mm-hmm.
me of like, I don't know if you have any friends like this. I I had a college friend that loved going out to dinner spontaneously. Like he did not want to make plans, didn't want to make reservations. And that was great in college. Everything was spontaneous, right? And then we got jobs. We were living in the city. And, it would be like 8 p.m. on Saturday night. He's like, let's go out for dinner. And it's like, dude, everywhere is full. We didn't make a reservation. Like, we're going to end up at some crappy place. Right. And it's like, you eventually have to come to terms with the fact that, like, okay, the way that I was living my life may not work right now, given some of the
Totally.
constraints. And so it's just, again, being able to have that conversation and be honest about these are the realities of how our sex drives work. These are the realities of the time that we have in our day. That can be so helpful to starting to flip the perspective of, oh, okay, maybe it is not reasonable for us to be relying on spontaneity to keep our sex life going.
Yeah, like Seasons of Spontaneity. That should be your
Mhm.
next book title. There you go.
Yeah.
So I just going back to the responsive one really quickly. I know, like, there. Can you give some examples of non-sexual ways that someone could suggest to kind of like help you get in the mood? Like for me, if I was upstairs putting the kids to bed and I had made it through the day, I had made it through work, I had made it through the witching hour, and then I came downstairs to a sink full of dishes and him like sitting on the couch, like my guy, you're done. It's not happening, you know? But if I come down and I see him washing the dishes spontaneously for me, I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
that's one thing off my plate. That is like, you saw something that I needed support with or that the house needed support with and you just did it. Like that is so sexy. Like
Uh-huh.
that I think a lot of people might want to hear like what are those things that are not necessarily sexual in nature but can really kind of set the tone for like, okay, like this is let's do this, you know?
Absolutely. And these are really important things for women in particular to start paying attention to. Like a lot of people will tell us, "Well, I have no clue what gets me turned on," because they're thinking of it in such a sexual way. Like, "Oh, there's
Mm,
supposed to be this like seductive look that my
Yeah.
partner gives me or like that one hot spot on my body that he touches and I'm ready to go." But for so many of us, getting turned on is not sexual. It's actually
mhm.
other things going on, in the relationship. So what you just described is a super common one is, we like to call it chore play too sometimes to be playful
Oh, I
about it.
love that.
Yeah, so it's like, chores suck. Nobody likes doing I don't like washing dishes. Xander doesn't like washing dishes, but we try to be like, playful about it. Like he'll be hamming it up, like seductively washing the pan or like wiping the counters down. But so you can be playful about it, but for a lot of women it's just like I feel seen by that. You
Uh-huh.
saw something that needed to be done or I feel like I have a true teammate in life. I don't feel like you're yet another being in this house that I'm having to take care of and having to
Mhm.
do things for. So having a partner who participates, who shares the mental load, who handles responsibilities, who does stuff without being asked, that's really huge. Another super common one is emotional connection. A lot of women tell us, like, I feel like my partner doesn't really care that much about the person that I am. Like, it just doesn't seem like he's that interested in me.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of men I don't think it actually is the case that the partner isn't interested. I think men just don't realize how much we like to be asked genuine questions about, how our day was, how are you feeling, what's something I can support you with, and actually like truly listening to the answer and being interested in that. So that's another
Mhm.
big thing that comes up for a lot of people. And then there's also non-sexual touch. So touch doesn't have to be, a lot of us, unfortunately, in long-term relationships, we start getting into these patterns where we only touch each other during sex or in the lead up to sex. So we start getting very suspicious of our partner's touch. That's actually what the bristle reaction is all about. That was a,
Mm.
a term that we coined when your partner comes up to touch you and you can feel yourself bristle, like your guard goes up. You're like, I know what you're trying to do, buddy. So
Mhm.
one of the ways to get over that is to bring more touch into the relationship. So we break that connection that we only touch when we want sex or we only touch during sex. So having more non-sexual touch with each other, long hugs, sitting on the couch together and holding hands, cuddling up together, massaging your back without the hands starting to creep,
Mhm.
downwards. So non-sexual touch is another great one.
I also just want to go back to the example that you gave about like you're putting the kids to bed and the two worlds. You can come downstairs and he's on the couch watching TV and there's a pile of dishes, or he's working on the dishes. And I think for anybody else that is struggling with that type of thing, because I think that is a very real situation that you described. Like I think people shouldn't be scared to try to create a situation where that's not going to happen, where it's like, hey, look, the whoever is putting the kids to bed, the other person, like we put the kids to bed after dinner, there's always dishes, or the kitchen is always dirty, or whatever. We know that X, Y, and Z is gonna need to get done. So whoever puts the kids to bed, the other person does these things. Like there should not ever be a situation where, someone is doing work in the house, i.e., putting the kids to bed, and someone else is just relaxing when there's other stuff
Mhm.
to be done. And I think so many people just like don't having it sucks having this conversation about chores, but like
Mhm.
it's so important to just be like, look, like if we want to have sex, the stuff has to get done. And so, how are we going to split it up?
And actually, I think bedtime is such a great opportunity to create that transition ritual that we were talking about earlier. Like if you're a woman, if you were to talk to your husband and say, "Hey, our sex life is important to me. I want us to be able to connect more. Couple nights a week or whatever it is, one night a week, whatever you want. I want you to take over bedtime so I get that time to myself." And then you
Mhm.
can take that time to maybe it's like reading a spicy book, listening to a spicy book, taking an actual bath or a shower, or just sitting in the closet, alone. But I think a lot of men, if they make that connection and they hear like connection is important to me, our sex life is important to me. This is a way that I could get myself turned on and in the mood and ready to connect with you.
It's also too a big part of what I'm hearing when you're saying this is like having the conversation ahead of time before it becomes an argument or an explosion or like the resentment of like coming down the stairs and seeing them sit and you're like, oh
Yeah.
God, like, you know, I think that is something that is really hard for people to make the time for, but it's so important to be able to have those
Mhm.
conversations with your partner and be honest and be like, I need your support. I can't give you this if you can't support
Yep.
me in this way, you know?
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah, so if you're listening to
yeah,
this episode and thinking like, "Oh, we're not there yet," or like, "No, we don't have to deal with that." Great, but like pause and start talking to your partner about all this stuff. Like, how do we make sure we don't get to this point, or how do we start using these tips now so that it doesn't get bad? Unfortunately,
yeah,
most of us believe it's like we get into relationships and then we put so much effort into like getting the person and locking it down and getting married, and then we let our foot off the gas and
uh-huh,
we really don't put much of an effort into it. We start to take our relationships for granted and like, oh yeah, he's always going to be there. Oh yeah, we're married. And a lot of people stop doing the things that made the relationship so great in the first place. And if you stop watering the grass is going to turn brown and die.
Or you just
yeah,
fall, or you just kind of fall into these assumed patterns of like, oh yeah, before we had kids, this was how things were kind of split up responsibilities wise. And then you don't ever have an explicit conversation about what do we need to change now that we do have kids, now that things look totally different and things are inherently imbalanced given gender differences and the fact that, women have a different value to their kids in terms of they're actually providing nutrients to them and stuff like that. Um,
totally.
and so, yeah, it's like I think that situation you described of like coming down the stairs and your partner is sitting on the couch is probably for most people is coming out of a situation where, yeah, that's what it might have looked like 5 years ago. But we just never
Mhm,
had the conversation of, okay, what needs to change? And, like you as the default parent just took on more stuff without ever
mhm.
rebalancing.
Totally. So I feel like this is the perfect lead in to our part 2 of I would love to dig into your book, Sex Talks, and the 5 conversations that you cover. And we can obviously like you should all read the book for sure. But if we can like high level just kind of talk about like what are those conversations and for people that are like I don't know how to start that, like maybe one quick tip on like here you go. Tangible, something
Yeah.
tangible.
So we wrote the book because the idea of talking about sex is nothing new. When you're in your bed late at night in incognito mode on your phone, Googling, like, why are we not having sex anymore? Like, you'll see it in every article, like, you have to talk to your partner about it.
Just talk about
Yeah.
sex.
But that's all that you see. There's never any advice about, like, well, okay, how do I talk about this? What do I say? When do I say it? What do I do if they say XYZ? And so we hate vague, generic advice. So we really wanted to come up with a book that would tell people exactly how to talk about sex. So we took this huge topic and we boiled it down into 5 conversations that we think every couple would benefit from having, whether you're in a great place or you're really struggling in your relationship. And we put them in a specific order that we think is the best order to have them in, and we really dissect each conversation in the book of giving you so many practical details of like, here's exactly what to say. We give a ton of examples of here's how your partner might respond and here's how you would respond to each one. So it really guides people through it. But the 5 conversations are acknowledgement. So we picked this one to start with because most couples have never really talked about sex in their relationship, or they've only ever had bad conversations about it. So I'll be honest, the very first time that Xander and I had a real conversation about our sex life was me yelling at him, "Why do you never want to have sex with me anymore?" which, as you can imagine, did not go well
No,
and
Yeah.
did
not make the topic of sex, did not make continued conversations on that topic seem like an attractive thing. And that's the place most couples get into.
Yeah. So much of the book, we have a lot of embarrassing stories that we share in the book. Like, so much of it is do exactly the opposite of what we did, because that really sucked. So instead, what we want couples to do is let's get comfortable with sex as a general topic of conversation before we get into the trickier stuff. So you're not trying to bring up any complaints. You're not trying to solve any problems. You're literally just getting comfortable with the words. So you can talk about sex the same way you might talk about what do we want to have for dinner tonight. It just feels like an easier topic of
Yeah,
conversation.
like, hey, sex is this thing and we have it. We
Yeah.
do it.
So this is the best starting point for people. And this is, I'll give you a specific part of this conversation that you could have after you finish listening to this episode. So go to your partner just kind of randomly and ask them what one of their favorite sexual memories is with you. If you're worried that you're going to catch your partner off guard, or they're going to be like, I don't know, then you can go first and you can share with them like, hey, you know what memory randomly popped into my head the other day? I was thinking about our anniversary trip and that hotel that we were at and that crazy night that we had. And then you just leave it at there. At that. That's all you're doing is you're just sharing a fun memory. You don't launch into like, when we haven't had sex like that in a long time, or anything like that.
Yeah.
You're just it's just reminding the two of you like, oh yeah, we've had some good experiences together. And
I
oh, sex
love
can
that.
be like a fun, easy thing to talk
Yeah,
about. Doesn't have
it's
to
a
be
fun
scary.
thing. And also you're sending you're starting to plant the seeds that, hey, sex is important. It's
Mhm.
important to me.
Yeah,
Then the
I
second
love that.
conversation is connection. A lot of people were surprised that we were talking about emotional intimacy in a sex book, but we think that emotional and physical intimacy are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other in a long-term relationship. And so we wanted to start talking about like how can couples feel more connected to each other throughout the day, because most couples will describe themselves as feeling like roommates or strangers, ships passing in the night. And so if you're crawling into bed at the end of the night and pulling back the covers and it feels like there's an actual stranger pulling back the covers on the other side of the bed, it makes a lot of sense that you don't want to have sex with them. So this
Mhm.
conversation is all about what are little practical ways that couples can feel more connected all throughout the day so that it doesn't feel like we're strangers in bed at the end of the night. Then it
Yeah.
moves into desire. What do we need to get turned on, to feel excited about sex, to get in the mood? So the spontaneous and responsive thing that we talked about, that's a part of that conversation. We also talk about initiation styles. So it's similar to the love languages model, this idea that we all like to, give and receive love in different ways. We all like to have sex initiated in different ways too. So actually, you were describing earlier one of the types when you wanted to see Jay washing the dishes, that's the take care of me type. Like you like it when your
Mm.
partner is taking care of things around the house, taking care of things as a parent, taking care of you. It makes you feel really like loved and cared for, and that opens you up to connecting even more.
Mm.
The fourth
This feels
conversation,
like I'm sorry,
yeah.
not to cut you off, but this feels like a good spot to circle back to the transactional, like just one more thing piece
Yes,
that
I
you
was just
didn't.
about to, because that's the fourth
Okay, okay.
conversation is
Okay.
pleasure.
Okay.
What do we need to like have a good time? And so when you said that phrase earlier, it caught my attention because that's how the vast majority of women, and especially moms, describe sex. It's just one more thing I have to do for just one more person. Sex feels
Mhm.
like something that we are giving to our partner, not something that we are enjoying ourselves. Most women will come to us and complain about low sex drive. And the first question we ask them is, well, tell us about the sex that you're having. And they'll describe sex. It's boring. It's routine. It's more for my partner than it is for me. I don't really get anything out of it. And so then we ask them,
Why?
well,
Why would you
why
want
would
that?
you crave that then? It doesn't make
Totally.
any sense to crave something that is not enjoyable for you. One
Mhm.
of my favorite comparisons, I call this the mushy broccoli problem. I'm like, do you ever find yourself craving overly steamed, mushy, unseasoned broccoli? No, of course not. And do you think something's wrong with you for not craving it? No, of course not. The same is
Yeah.
true with sex. And a lot of us are having some mushy broccoli sex and really beating ourselves up for like, why don't I want it more? Of course you don't want it more. There's nothing worth
Yeah.
craving.
Yeah,
And so
totally.
we are so all about like taking the shame away from things. Like if you are having sex that's not craveable, not crave worthy, like it is not your fault. It's not your partner's fault. It's the fact that we were all socialized with so much misinformation about sex to feel so embarrassed and uncomfortable about sex. The ways that we're taught to have sex very heavily prioritize male pleasure in a male-female relationship.
And most women never really learn what actually is required to
Mm-hmm.
feel really good for them. I mean, the crazy
Uh-huh.
thing is that women have the capability of having such a more intense experience sexually
Mm-hmm.
than men are.
Nerve
The nerve
endings.
endings available to women via their genitalia is so much more
Mhm.
than men, and yet most men and women don't really understand some basic truths about how that actually works.
So, yeah,
Totally.
one of the most important things that we talk about in that chapter is the intercourse myth. Like most, men and women, male female couples, intercourse is what we think of as sex, right? But the problem with intercourse is that as women, we are getting stimulation in our vaginas when we have intercourse. And our vaginas don't have very many nerve endings. Think about how much more painful childbirth would be if you were full with tons and tons of nerve endings in your vagina.
Mhm.
The most sensitive part of our body is the clitoris. The clitoris is actually the biological equivalent of the penis. So you can think of it as like a ball of clay. I could take one ball of clay and I could shape it into a mug. I could take the same ball of clay and I could shape it into a plate. It's the same stuff that we're starting with, but I'm making two different shapes out of it. That's what the penis and the clitoris are. They start as the same
Mm.
tissues, but then they make these different shapes. So when we have intercourse, we're not getting clitoral stimulation typically. We're getting stimulation of a part of our body that just doesn't have a lot of nerve endings. So I always say, like, from a nerve ending standpoint, intercourse for a woman is like playing with a guy's balls. Like, that
Yeah.
might be fun. It might feel good,
Yeah,
but
that's going to
it's
be exciting for a second because I'm going to
Yeah.
be like, oh, more is coming. But it's not
Yeah.
good. Hey, it might even get me hard and temporarily because I'm looking for more, but it's not
Yeah.
going to last. I'm certainly not going to have an
an
orgasm
orgasm.
from it. I
Yeah.
think, we hear from like every now and then we get DMs from guys being like, I love ball play. I can have orgasms from it. Like, great, good for you. But like, yeah, one out of 1,000 men love that. But for the
Yeah.
most, that would seem crazy if that was what the expectation is. And yet that is often the expectation that we put
Mhm.
on women and we put in our sex lives.
I mean, imagine some alternate universe where what we describe as sex is a man rubbing his balls on a woman's clitoris. Like, we're getting the stimulation of the part of
Yeah.
our body that's most sensitive, most designed to feel pleasure, and he's getting stimulation of a part of his body that, like, sure, there's some nerve endings there, but not many. Like, would
Yeah.
we beat men up or like make them feel bad for
Yeah.
like, why aren't you having orgasms? What's wrong with you? Why don't you want to have sex more often? Like, of course
Yeah.
not. But it sounds
It's so
ridiculous, but
funny.
that's what we do to women.
No, but it makes total sense. And this is actually making me think about, and this might be like a totally irrelevant thing that we have to cut out because it's like nonsensical, but I know for me at least, and Xander, I'm sorry if this is TMI, but like I tore in certain areas during childbirth, some of which tore up, some of which tore down, and everything changed for me. Like the things
Mhm.
that had felt good before no longer felt
Yeah.
the same way. I was so scared of him touching certain areas because the sensitivity was totally different after being stitched. Like there were so
Yeah.
many things. And for him, like we had been together for over a decade at that point, and he was like he was like rocked. Like he was like, what do you mean? I can't
Mhm.
touch you. I feel like I can't do anything right. And I was like, I'm just scared. Like it was totally
Yeah.
different. And I wonder if part of like the whole conversation after having kids too, like have you experienced women kind of sharing that piece, that like having to
Absolutely.
navigate that? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of women have, I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, physical trauma from childbirth that can really change sensation. Another common thing that comes up is the breasts. A lot of women will say, I used to love having my boobs played with before, but now it's
Mm,
like, ooh, don't touch them, don't squeeze them. I don't like it. It doesn't feel sexual anymore. So it can really change. And so many of us get into this really bad pattern where we think like, oh, well, I told my partner I liked that in the past, or I like responded positively in the past. And now
10
I'm like,
years
yeah, now
ago.
I'm not allowed to change my mind and I'm not allowed to tell them
Yeah.
anything's different. But like bodies change. Our
Mhm.
preferences change. What we like changes, and that's okay. And I do think this is one of the ways that women misunderstand men. I think we're so used to trying to protect their egos, and I don't want to make him feel bad. I want to make him feel like he's doing a good thing. But men genuinely want to do what brings us pleasure. Like they
Mhm.
genuinely want more feedback, more instruction, more, just communication. So if they know what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and it's okay for it to be an exploration. I'm not saying that you need to like present to your guy like, here's my manifesto of all the things I like and dislike, Nobody has that. But like I just think we don't give men enough credit for the fact that like they they genuinely want to please you. They don't want to
Totally.
be doing things that you don't like. So it's on us to get a little courage and to be able to share with them like, hey, that feels really good, or could you try this instead?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think, I can speak from my experience here, and I think most men would probably agree, is like, as I was going through puberty, like, I fantasized about, when I would become sexually active and like how exciting it would be to have a serious partner and get to like figure out her body, figure out what really, figure out together what really works. And I think that's like at the end of the day, that's what so many men want, like from an early age, as they're, as they're kind of having a sexual awakening, right? But then you are an awkward teenager, you start fumbling around with people, and you never have that experience, right? Like you start to realize, oh, sex is a really fraught topic. It's, we are walking on eggshells, and it's like really the only real feedback I'm going to get is maybe getting the courage up to ask her at the end, hey, was that good for you? And,
Yeah,
and then like,
yeah.
and she's wanting to say, yeah, no matter what, because, she wants it to seem like things were clicking and he did a good job. Right. And so very quickly men start getting the signal that, oh yeah, no, that whole fantasy that you had, that's not on the table. Right. Like this is such a weird, awkward thing. I'm better served just figuring out what I think works based on this probably overly exuberant feedback that I'm getting
Mhm.
from, from one person, from multiple partners. And so we get this idea of, okay, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And the reality is most men, unfortunately, what you think you are doing is not actually the right thing. And
Mhm.
all the feedback that you got, like, take it with a grain of salt. Like,
Yeah.
this is such a great opportunity to start over. Having kids is such a great opportunity to reset your sex life. Hey, things feel different. We get to figure this out together. Like, this is
Yeah.
like, I have like a new body, basically. We get to figure this out
Exploring.
together. We get to explore and, start from zero and throw out all the stuff that we thought we knew.
I love that perspective shift. I feel like that's really powerful. That's going to be
Mhm.
powerful for someone that needs to hear that that's okay, and it's okay to
Yeah.
press the reset button and figure it out together. Okay, and then last one, we didn't talk exploration, right?
Yeah, that's the fifth and final conversation is exploration. So most people have heard the advice of like keeping it spicy and trying new things in the bedroom. And it actually is good advice. Research shows that when we do new things with our partner, our brains light up. Like that's why we fell in love with our partner in the first place. We were doing all these new things with them. It's another example of how we take our foot off the gas. So the problem with exploration is a lot of people here keep it spicy and they go to extremes, like thinking, oh, well, now we have to have a threesome, or we need to do some like crazy 50 Shades of Grey bondage stuff. And if you want to do those things, go for it. That's amazing. But trying new things does not have to be like pushing yourself wildly out of your comfort zone. And actually, it doesn't even need to be new things. So it could be just bringing back stuff that you used to do in your sex life that you haven't done in a while. So most of us, as time goes on, it's like our experience of sex narrows down smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where, like, if you're listening right now, you could probably script out for me right now. If I were to say, tell me what sex, like the average sexual experience looks like, it's probably like, okay, we do like a couple seconds of making out. There's a little bit of groping, and then we're like right on to the intercourse, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, let's just bring back some of the things that you guys haven't done in a while. Maybe it's, we used to get a little more creative with positions positions. And there was that position we tried that was so fun, but we never ended up doing it again. Or we used to have sex like on the chair instead of in
I
the
was just gonna
bed,
say changing the location. That's
Yeah,
such a
change
good
the
one. Yeah.
location. Or even like we used to have morning sex. And gosh, we haven't had morning sex in forever. So just little tweaks like that, it can really make such a big difference.
Yeah, and there's a good reason why this is the fifth conversation too, is because, yeah, it is great advice to try new things. If you try to jump into trying something new and you barely even acknowledge that sex is a thing that you have, you don't have a strong emotional
Mhm.
connection. You are missing each other in terms of not understanding how your desire works. The sex you're having is imbalanced pleasure-wise. You're not going to have a great experience trying new things. It's so
Yeah.
important to cover those other ones, and then you'll find, yeah, trying new things might have felt scary in the past. Well, of course it feels scary because you don't know how to talk about it. You kind of have a sense that it might be good for one of you, but it's probably not going to be good for the other one, right? So it feels
Uh,
fraught. But yeah, once you cover those four, the trying new things stuff, that opens up a whole new world of possibilities. It starts to feel fun and exciting again because it's like, oh yeah, this is a topic we are totally comfortable with. I know that I can give my partner a great experience. I know what they need. I know how to initiate all that stuff. And it's like, okay, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't we bring some new things into the mix? So yeah, I think
yeah.
it's, ideally you want to go through these conversations in the order we have them because they're really meant to build on each other. Yeah, so if exploration sounds a little scary right now, don't worry. Just cover the other stuff. By the time you get there, it's going to be fun, I promise.
I love it. Oh my gosh, I feel like this was incredible. And I hate to cut us off, but I just heard my babies come in. So is there anything else? And they're going to come barreling. I locked the door, but they're going to come barreling any second. So is there anything else that you feel like you're like, I don't want to get off this until I say this one last thing to people? And then tell us again where people can find you, because I know everyone's going to want to hear more of what you have to share if they don't already know you guys.
Yeah, so let me share one other tip. We're like I said, we're all about being practical and giving like what are small, simple things that we can do that'll make a big difference. So I want to share about the importance of gratitude. Most like we've all heard that word. Most of us, it feels like a little bit cheesy, like, oh, I know I'm supposed to get my gratitude journal out. But gratitude has actually been found to be the number one predictor of marital satisfaction, which is wild. And gratitude is amazing because it's free, it's fast, it's easy, it feels good to give and to receive. Like it's such a no-brainer. And I think one of the reasons why it's so powerful in relationships is because it's so hard to get into a relationship, to choose to spend your life with somebody and to wind up feeling invisible to them. And I think that's unfortunately where so many of us are in our relationships right now. So
Yeah,
gratitude is a way of showing your partner, I still see you. I see you and I
I
appreciate
love
you.
that.
So if you could take 10 seconds a day to just call out, it could be something about your partner, like the person that they are. It could be something that you saw them do, but try to be detailed, not just like, I love you, say something more
Mm,
specific. It'll make such a big difference.
It's also a great way to get out of feeling like your roommates or like it's just a transactional relationship. Like I have my
yeah,
list of household responsibilities, you have your list of household responsibilities, we divide and conquer. And I think it can be so easy to kind of forget that you can express gratitude for things that are your partner's responsibility. Like it's still overall the responsibility for maintaining the household is both of yours, right? And it's
yeah,
okay to thank your partner for something that they always do. I think it's just but it's so easy to forget. So easy to be like, oh yeah, well that's just their job. Why would I thank them for that? Like they're not thanking
yeah,
me for the 20 things I'm doing. But hey, just try being like, hey, thanks for doing the dishes. Like, it's so nice having a clean kitchen. Even if they
yeah.
always do it, that's a way to help them feel seen and to get you out of that, oh yeah, it's just purely transactional. Because
Mhm.
it sucks.
Yeah.
No one gets into a relationship you know, to have 16 hours a day feel like transactional.
Yeah.
Totally. And I don't know if you would agree with this, but I'm curious. I know for me, in those seasons where I was finding it hard to like say that to Jay, shooting him a text message when he was at work,
Mhm.
like just being like, I'm thinking about you. And I so appreciate that you're at work working hard for us. Like, I just love you so much. He would literally come home and be like, I felt so seen. Like, thank you for that message.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
it's
Mhm.
like, if
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're having trouble having the actual conversation, or you can't find pockets of time, or it feels like you can't, like maybe just shoot the message and be like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
thinking of you, you know?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that. We're big fans of just send a text message. Send it when you feel it. It makes such a big
yeah,
difference. But yeah,
I
we'd
love
love to
that.
connect with anybody in your community. I really hope this has been a helpful episode. We have so many other tips, like we could just really scratch the surface. But you can find us on Instagram. We're very active there. We're at Vanessa and Xander. And then our website is vmtherapy.com. It's my initials, vmtherapy.com. We have a ton of really fun guides and courses like our ultimate foreplay guide or our ultimate sex guide. If you're like, you were listening earlier and thinking, "Ooh, yeah, sex does feel like something that's just yet another thing to do." Definitely check those out. And we have an incredible membership called Deeper for couples who don't want to settle for being roommates, where we just guide you through these, some of the kinds of tips that we've talked about today, like the simple, practical things that we can do when we're short on time, short on energy, but they make a surprisingly big difference.
And if you want to pick up the book Sex Talks, that's at sextalksbook.com or on Amazon, anywhere you find books. It's really good.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for this. Thank you for being here, and hopefully we can connect again really soon.
Thanks for having
And
Thank you.
us.
absolutely, we'll see you next time on another episode of More Than Milestones.